So speaking about sort of like being kind of like adaptable with your training and not being afraid to kind of change things up. I mean, I'm sure you have like, even if it might be sort of fairly loose, you have sort of like a typical sort of like weekly structure to your training.
Yeah.
What would, and obviously it's going to depend upon the time of year, that kind of thing as well. But like typically, what would like a week of training, and in fact, not just training, but like a week of work and training look like for you? Because I think it would be interesting to sort of get some illustrations of sort of like how they're sort of like meshed together as well.
Yeah. So yeah, normal week for me. I actually only see my coach face to face anyway, twice a week.
Okay.
Um, so that will be on a Tuesday and a Friday, which also happen to be the heavy lifting days and the fast running days. So I usually have I'd say I have four training sessions a week with the potential for a fifth session, which is more of a recovery session, which would be on Saturday on a weekend. So a normal week for me, Monday. So on Monday I usually go to the office. So I'll go to work on a Monday, come back home, baby girl to bed, and then I'll train in the evening. And that will sort of be a prep session. So I don't run fast on Mondays and Thursdays. So I run fast Tuesday, Friday. So Monday will be a preparation day in terms of like shapes and postures for the Tuesday session. And it'll be a little bit of running, but much sort of lower volume and sort of lower speeds. So more of a tempo type day.
Mhm.
Tuesdays, thankfully, so obviously I mentioned earlier that my employer is super, super supportive. So Tuesday, they've given me like a flexible working arrangement, which allows me to train during the day and then sort of catch up the hours later on in the afternoon. So that'll be a fast day. So, we'll do sort of acceleration, sort of some longer runs, maybe sort of, blocks to 60, blocks to 80, that kind of thing. And then heavier lifts in the gym. So your traditional like Olympic lifts or like deadlifts, squats, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that'll be Tuesdays. And then that's very similar to Friday. So Tuesday and Fridays are very similar in that we lift heavy and we run fast. Obviously, like you said, depending on where we're at in the season. So winter, it'll be a much shorter accelerations.
Mhm.
And then maybe sort of like we will do longer runs, but they might be on the grass, for instance, and stuff like that. Contrast, obviously, later on in the season when you're in blocks, you're in spikes, and your longer runs will be sort of, blocks to 60, blocks to 80, blocks to 110, that kind of thing. Depending on your programming. Wednesday is a rest day. So I'll usually go to the office on that day. So I usually go to the office twice a week. So I'll usually go to the office on a Wednesday as well because that's my rest day.
Mhm.
So that's completely, no training, just normal office day. Then yeah, Thursday, very similar to Monday, preparation for the Friday. And then yeah, Friday another fast day with heavy lifting and sprints, and then we'll have like therapy contacts. Or I'll see my osteo, get some acupuncture adjustments, soft tissue, that sort of thing. And some I also have soft tissue, sorry, on Tuesday. So Tuesday, Friday are very much all in days in terms of my track, in terms of gym, in terms of sort of therapy, recovery type of stuff. And then yeah, Saturday will be like a sort of light cardio, some circuits, maybe just mobility type things. So yeah, that's sort of a usual sort of training week for me.
Okay. So I mean, it sounds like everything is just centered around those Tuesday, Friday
Yeah,
type of days.
exactly that.
Everything is
So,
just to get you
pat-
ready for them.
yeah, particularly for me, exactly that. So, I think particularly for me, like I wouldn't say everyone else's program is quite like that. Mine is very
Right.
much geared towards making sure Eugene can come in and have super quality session on Tuesdays and Fridays. Not that Monday and Thursdays aren't important. They're very important because I need to be ready and set those days up well. But
Mhm.
yeah, my weeks are definitely geared to okay. At the moment, I can only see my coach twice a week. So how do we make sure that those two times are spot on quality? So yeah, that's sort of how it will work for me.
Okay. And then I guess just sort of one follow-up question with that. So you said that the longer runs in the latter part of the year, or kind of as you're coming into the competitive phase of the season, might be like you might go to like 110s from blocks, stuff like that. Um, in kind of like the more depths of winter when you're doing those longer runs on the grass, kind of like how
Yeah.
how sort of far out might you be running in those
So I
kind of
think the
sessions?
I think the longest grass run I did this winter, just winter for the 23 season it was 200, 180, 200 meters.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably the longest grass run. So we'll do a certain amount of runs with a certain recovery to like 200 meters. Then we'll do a certain amount of runs with certain recovery, maybe to like 150 meters. Then we'll do a certain amount of runs for a certain recovery to like 100 meters. Or he might mix it up. We might do like the longer run to like a 200. Then we'll drop down to like 120, 150. Then we'll go 200 again and that sort of thing. But yeah, probably for me personally, probably ran as far as 200 meters on a grass run.
And then the kind of like you said earlier, like the longer runs that you'd be doing, like pre-season, would be probably typically shorter than that. Is that fair to say, or not
Yeah.
necessarily? Yeah.
As pre-season, as in
Well, sort of like by the
pre.
time you get to sort of like the pre-comp, sort of like so by
Oh,
the time you get kind of, I
so the
guess
long.
sort of like March, April, May time.
Yeah. So probably longest runs I'll be doing then probably around 150.
Okay.
Yeah. For
All
me
right.
personally, I didn't run further than about 150
Okay.
in those kind of sessions.
So you kind of got like the short runs, so like the accelerations are getting longer throughout the season, and
Yeah,
then the longer runs are kind of
exactly.
getting shorter throughout the year.
Exactly that. Exactly
Yeah.
that.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's interesting. And then again, I know Steve is very technical, and so I'll be interested to kind of like take your two things about him. I know he's technical, and I know he's kind of very individual.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to hear kind of some technical cues that for you personally you found have like resonated and made,
Mm.
if any of those have made sort of like or you feel like they've made a meaningful impact on your performance.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's so many.
Right.
It's interesting because he completely took apart my understanding of what the 100 meters was when
Right.
I first joined him, and he just broke me down to like step one. And I remember I was training just the first step for like weeks.
Right.
And then once I got the first step, it was like, cool. What's step two? Step three? And I was thinking, damn, like this guy's really like just really re-teaching me how to run. But I think by far and away, the biggest thing that he's helped me with is the arms. And I mentioned it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And just having sort of there was I mean every runner is a little bit asymmetrical, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But yeah, so I think there are elements of that are natural to me. But I think for me, there would be like for my first, movement at the blocks, I'd have this really aggressive arm movement, and then it would shorten up.
Right.
So you'd have a big split to get out the blocks. Then I'd shorten up the arms, and then once I've got a bit of momentum going, and I'm a little bit more upright, then I bring the arms back in. And one of the
Right.
biggest things he said to me was, "Look, whatever you decide to do off the first block, if you want to have this super big split, you want to whatever you do, you need to like it needs to you need to reverse that the same way. You need to keep that going. You need to because that's what's going to help you balance your lower body. Because whatever your arms are doing, your legs are going to mimic. And
Mm-hmm.
he was trying to explain to me that obviously the idea is obviously you're trying to project down. You're trying to do it in an optimal fashion, but in the least amount of steps as possible. Really and truly, that's kind of my kind of understanding and take on the event. I'm not trying to take loads of steps.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting one because I'm naturally a frequency type runner.
Okay.
But let's take my 993 run, which I did in 45 steps, or my 1004 when I beat Omanyala in Andorf, which I did incredibly in 44 steps.
Okay.
Um, Contrast that to when I first joined Steve and I was running 100 in like 48, 47 steps.
Okay.
So I think the arms definitely this season in terms of I ran 10:05 last year in 46 steps. And obviously I've run 9 and 10s in 44, 45 steps. So the arms has been probably one of the biggest things in terms of learning how to utilize them in an optimal fashion, not shortening them prematurely, not having this really sort of like big split off the block and then going really, really short.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the first things. And then the other thing is I feel like, and I don't want to start a whole other debate, but I feel like the drive phase is
Right.
one of the most misunderstood things in this sport, in it. But I don't want to go into that too much. Um, all I will say is that he speaks a lot about the hips
Right.
and where the hips are in relation to the rest of your body. And I think one of the things that I've also found is if you're in a situation, if your hips are behind, when you land, and I don't want to get too technical, but if your
Mm-hmm.
hips are behind you, when you land, you have to wait for your hips to to become level, then get in front before you can take the next step. It's just mechanically how we're made. You can't take the next step until your hips have come through. And I think one of the things he helped me to understand is, what are you trying to accelerate? Your center of mass and the hips. So those kind of cues of understanding, okay, what do I need to, what do I actually need to be projecting down the track, and everything else will sort of follow with that. So those are sort of cues that have helped massively in terms of my understanding of the event, and I think have helped me to utilize the natural gifts that I have.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I almost sort of like put words in your mouth earlier. I'm assuming as an accountant you're a numbers guy, and is it fair to assume that you quite like data? So I'm just hearing you talk about like the number of steps that you're
Steps
taking.
and yeah. You know what? Yes. So I like numbers, but I'm very particular about the numbers. So if you asked me, oh, what's my fastest split in training to whatever, I can tell you.
Okay.
You can ask Steve, but so me and Steve don't do times. Like
Yep.
me personally, I came from, so my old coach, he was super analytical. So he had an investment banking background. So like he was telling me times all the time. So the
Right.
way I used to assess my performance in training was based on how fast I was running. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't based on the efficiency of my movement. If I was understanding the concepts I was being taught, it was based on, yo, coach, how fast was that? If it wasn't as fast as I wanted it to be or as I thought it should be, then I wasn't happy.
Right.
With Steve, it's all about, is he happy with how I'm moving?
Yeah.
Is he happy with the quality of the mechanics? If he's happy with the quality of mechanics, I couldn't care less how fast it is. Because I know that once I start nailing those postures and positions, the speed is going to be there in bucket loads. So
Okay.
for me, I'm far more concerned with postures and positions when it comes to the times. But there are, like you said, other data points that as an accountant and as a finance guy, I'm very interested in. So one of them is always steps, like my step length and how many steps that I'm taking to cover the same distance. And like I said, for me, I've noticed that when I came to Steve, 60 meters, I was running 33 steps. And I think my PB when I ran 660 was in 30 steps. And
Right.
obviously, like I said, with 100 meters, I've come down from like 48, 47, down to 44, 45. So those are the kind of data points that I'm definitely like, okay, yeah, I know my technique is improved if I've brought my step lengths down. That's my steps down and obviously increase my step length.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess like those data points are reflective of how you're moving, right? That in
Yeah,
terms of
I
the
believe
technical
so.
aspects which you like, and um, I know Steve's sort of like quite big on like movement quality. I mean, you mentioned before like he's sort of like a health first practitioner,
Yeah,
and the other thing from spending a little bit of time around him, I know that he was like huge on movement quality, and he kind of likes teaching the event. He likes teaching
yeah,
the process of getting through it. So, all right, yeah, cool. That was really interesting. And I know we've spoken a little bit about kind of your lifestyle kind of away from the track in terms of your professional life, but what about things like recovery and things that are sort of linked to that? Like how do you monitor your sleep and nutrition, and if so, how do you kind of like manage those aspects of recovery?
yeah. I think recovery for somebody like me is huge. So I mean, I don't look at my age as anything, any sort of limiting factor. But of course, being an older athlete,
Mhm.
and being as busy as I think, because I
Yeah,
do so many different things,
lots of
my
taps like you were saying
recovery,
before.
yeah. So my recovery needs to be on point. So I think about that a lot and how to like. I mean, I say to people all the time, like, people's always thinking like, I've had so many people ask me this week, oh, what supplements do you take? Like, what's the best supplement? Da, 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 da. I'm like, yeah, cool. I can bring you on some supplements, but bro, just get a good night's sleep, drink some
Yeah,
water. Like, sleep is by far and away the best performance enhancer there is. Like, if you want to talk about, oh, what's the best supplement, sleep, kind of thing. So I think for me, one of the things I think about a lot is how to optimize my sleep. So of
mhm.
course I do have some supplements that will help with that. I do really, really like natural stuff, so like tart cherry juice,
Okay.
things like that. I really like to take before bed. So I think a lot about recovery, a lot. You know what I mean? From different recovery tools, like Normatec boots and massage guns, to salt baths, blue light glasses before bed.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
I really do a lot of reading around how to optimize my sleep. Because like I said, as far as I'm concerned, that is the best way that I'm going to be able to recover and improve my performance. After I'm training really, really hard and throwing around all these weights and running fast and training, okay, I need to make sure I, recover well, get those really good muscle adaptations, and then come again. So I think a lot about optimizing sleep because I'm so busy. I don't have the luxury of having to recover from one thing. I'm recovering from life.
Yeah.
I'm recovering from life, so I need to make sure my recovery is on point. So yeah, for sure, by far, probably the thing I think about the most is, okay, how can I optimize my recovery? And then of course, making sure that I'm eating really well. So I think one of the first things that I know you've done something with Jermaine,
Yeah.
and my S&C coach, and when he first joined, I remember, I'll never forget this. I used to do fast. Don't ask me why.
Okay.
I used to train fasted.
Right.
It's something I'd been doing pre-track. So I just thought, yeah, I'm going to train fasted when I'm in track and field. Yeah, cool. And I remember Jermaine's first day in the session he had me doing, and this had never ever happened to me before. But I literally failed the session. Like, I got to a point and I could not lift weights.
Right.
Like, I was completely spent. And then he asked me, "Oh, what did you have for breakfast?" I was like, "Breakfast? Didn't eat breakfast, mate." And I
For
vowed to myself,
context, what time of day was this taking place? What time of day were you training?
I was training in the morning, but by the time I got
Right.
into the gym, it was probably like midday.
Yeah. Okay.
So I hadn't eaten anything. I'd had like a banana, so I'd have like a banana mid-session, but I didn't have that sort of like, I didn't fuel myself at all
Yeah.
that morning. So I was kind of trying to rely on the stores from like, the day before or whatever. So I think that's another thing that I've really optimized as well. Like, I have quite a big breakfast. Whenever I tell people what I eat before training, they're like, "Right, you eat all of that? Like, how do you even train?"
Oh,
But
I want to
because
know
I'll
what you
wait,
eat now.
well, I'll wake up 3 hours before I need to train, because I'm like,
Okay.
I want to give myself 3 hours. Because if you want to have
Yeah.
a big meal, you need about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours for it to really digest.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually will have porridge with, like, I might have some peanut butter in there, like blueberries, whatever. So I'll have some sort of fresh fruit and peanut butter with porridge, oats, and then I will have 3 boiled eggs,
Mm-hmm.
um, cottage cheese. Sometimes if I want some extra protein, I'll have some tuna as well on toast.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that's my usual breakfast. So quite a big breakfast,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
heavy on the percent. I like to get at least somewhere around like 40 grams, 40 to 50 grams of protein in my breakfast. Idea there being, obviously, to help myself feel fuller for longer with the protein, and obviously enough carbohydrates to fuel my
Mm-hmm.
workout.
Mm-hmm.
So my sleep, and then also how well I eat in the morning before I train, are two of the biggest things that I focus on.
Okay.
Because then I feel like, okay, cool, I've got the fuel that I need to really power through that session. Because our training days can be quite long. So I know I gave you a little schedule of our week, but in terms of like timing, so we might start the track session at 9:30
Mm-hmm.
and finish at about midday,
Mm-hmm.
short break, and then I'm in the gym for about another hour and a half.
Yeah.
So it's just a long day. Like, but I would have, if I get to training at 9, I'm not going home until about 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
So, and
I do
in
recall
between, of
that from
course,
being with you kind of in Houston at
yeah,
Prairie View, that like the training days were, yeah, they were long. Yeah. Sorry, I
yeah.
cut you off there.
No, that's fine. Yeah. So I think for me, it's just making sure I'm fueled up correctly.
Yeah. I think yeah, I mean that really does sort of singing from the same hymn sheet in terms of the way that I look at it. Like the big three things with recovery are sleep, nutrition, and hydration. And obviously you mentioned things like massage guns, Normatec boots, that kind of stuff. And I look at that as more sort of like icing on the cake, but the cake is those big kind of three.
Yeah.
Um, and and I always find nutrition like a fairly interesting one, because it's so varied. Yeah, opinions are so varied, and especially with social media, like if you're exposed to all these kind of ideas, and then not you personally, but you as as whoever is the consumer is exposed to all these kind of ideas. And what does well on social media are extreme ideas as well. So you end up like,
Yeah.
so kind of thinking about, with the fasting thing. I mean, I'm sure that I could probably go on Twitter or X or Instagram now, or whatever, and I could find somebody that would tell me why I need to fast before I train. And it's
Yeah, for
not
sure.
necessarily kind of like data driven advice or research, evidence based advice. It's yeah, it's an interesting one. And then with your sleep, are you measuring it? Do you have like an app
So
or a...
no, so I've not actually ventured into and I'll tell you the reason why.
Yeah, go on.
Because I think data is very important, right?
Mhm.
But
I think
I
I know
think
what
it
you're
should
going to
come with
say,
a
but I'll let you finish. Yeah, go on.
I just think there needs to be a caveat because, like, okay, cool, you got this data. What are you gonna do with it? Because I think with stuff like Whoop bands, right?
Mhm.
If I don't know if you're coming to a race now and then you wake
Yeah,
up and you look at your
recovery
analytics of
score.
your sleep and your recovery score is like 10%, you're gonna convince yourself that
Yeah,
there's something wrong with you, and you might feel okay, or
yeah,
you might not feel okay. You might not feel okay. You might feel okay, but because this watch has told you your recovery score is really low, depending on your sort of disposition and how you think, that could be really, really bad for you.
hmm hmm
So I think for me, it's like sometimes, you don't really need all that information. It's
yeah,
just, okay, I want to aim for X amount of sleep every night. So I'm going to go to sleep at this time. I'm going to make sure my room's really, really dark. And if not, I've got this really great sleep mask, and then I'm going to make sure my room's cool. I'm wearing light, loose fitting clothing. So I'll aim for, like, I don't know, somewhere between 8 and 9 hours of sleep a night. So I think for me that's good enough. I think because I know myself, I could get too into the detail of what the Whoop
minutia.
band or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I just think for some people, you're focusing on the wrong things.
yeah.
You're focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah, I think it can lead to, like you say, depending upon your disposition, like neurotic behavior, right? You become, I think I've got that disposition, and I used to have a Fitbit, and I'd wake up, and then I'd be upset if my resting heart rate was like 2 beats per minute than it was
Yeah,
before, and there's nothing really I can do about that other than like you say, common sense things, making sure I'm going to bed on time and stuff like that. I
yeah,
can't
exactly.
actively try and have a lower resting heart rate the next day, but it leads to these things that if you're not aware of it, then there's the stress of worrying about it is worse than the thing itself sometimes.
Yeah, hundred
Um,
percent.
and I think kind of with nutrition, I mean, you mentioned that you kind of shoot for 40 to 50 grams of protein at breakfast, but
Yeah.
you're not counting calories or anything like that.
No,
Or
exactly. So
it's the
again,
same kind of concept.
yeah, the same thing. So I don't do the macro thing. I don't
Yeah,
count calories. I'm not weighing my food. I'm just looking at it and thinking, okay, that looks like enough
yeah,
protein. So if there's anything, I do try to track a bit, but it'll be like, okay, I think there's about 6 grams of protein in an egg. So I'm gonna have
yeah,
three
okay.
of them.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think,
yeah,
and then if I look at the tin, oh, there's 20 in this. Okay, cool. So
yeah,
that's as far as I go with it. But
yeah,
I don't weigh stuff again because, yes, I think it's good to have that discipline of
yeah.
people who do count and all that kind of stuff. But it's almost like, I
The
don't
mental
know.
energy it requires.
Yeah, to
And you
do
spoke
all of
about mental
that.
fatigue earlier as well.
Oh, listen, that will creep up on you. That one's sneaky because you'll go training or you'll go to a race and you think, oh, I feel great.
Hmm hmm
And then you won't perform well or you won't run well and you won't know why.
Yeah.
But it's mental fatigue will do that to you because it won't allow your CNS to get where it needs to be. It just won't allow it. You know what I mean? Your body's never gonna. I've got an osteopath who said this to me, and I was like, oh, this is really profound. Your body is never going to intentionally harm itself.
Yeah.
It will never do it. It's not going to intentionally do it. So it will just shut certain things off to
Yeah. Okay.
stop you even being able to get to a position of
Yeah.
seriously hurting yourself. So you
You
might
you
feel
can't
great and
override that mechanism.
you can't override it, right? So I think that's kind of the main that's it really, really profound to me when he said it to me about, so yeah, for me, I think yeah, I try not to get too drawn into those kind of details. I think again depends how your mind works. For some people that might be great. But I mean,
Yeah.
for me, you might lead to like a really unhealthy relationship
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
food and with sleep and all these things, and I don't
Yeah.
want that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could tell you're a numbers guy though, because I'd be rounding those 6 grams down to 5. Makes it easy for me to multiply. But yeah. All right, cool. I've got one more question I wanted to ask you then. So, favorite and least favorite track sessions. So is there a day where you know, Steve set you the session and you're like, yeah, I'm excited, this is me. And then is there a day where Steve set you a session, you're like, this isn't me, but I've got to try and find a way to get this done?
I think by far my favorite is it's got to be either. I mean, everyone loves blocks in it,
Yeah.
so I do love blocks, particularly competitive blocks. So I do like those days, but putting blocks aside, I think you was there when we did some cone runs in
Yeah.
because the way we do cone runs, anyway, at least the way I do cone runs, I think cone runs have been the thing. If anybody wants to know how on earth, in the best drill that for me personally, that got my steps from 48 to 44, 45 is cone runs, cone drills, because I started off with really small spacings. I couldn't tell you what the spacings are. I just
Right.
know I've gone from small to big. But yeah, cone runs are by far one of my favorite drills to do because it helped to teach me how to generate stride length at the
Okay.
back end of the race. So that's why I really, really love cone runs. Just being patient at the beginning of the cone run to build up the momentum as you're coming over the cones, but then doing it in such a way that you've still got, that frequency and ability to, cover ground towards the
Mhm.
back end of the run. So yeah, cone runs probably by easily my favorite track session, other, next to blocks and competitive blocks. Least favorite are probably those grass runs, man,
Yeah.
because obviously I've not been in the sport long. So the 2 winters prior to 2022 winter, I was injured. So my program during winter was more of a rehab program, which meant when the rest of the group were doing these awful grass runs, I wasn't doing them. So the first time I experienced grass runs was 2022 winter.
Right.
And Steve speaks about, like, you have three things, right? So you've got high speed running, sort of like suboptimal, sub maximal running, and then you call like tempo running, and then you've got gym, like, or strength and conditioning. And you can be excellent at one, you can be you're sort of good at another, and then you could be sort of satisfactory
Right.
at the third one. So I'd say I excel at high speed running. I'd say that I'm pretty good in the gym, and then I'd say that tempo sub maximal stuff is not really my bag.
Okay.
So I absolutely hate grass runs, 100%. I'm not looking forward to them at all. The grass we run on isn't the most even grass either, and they're just horrible. To be
Yeah.
honest, they're just
Yeah.
horrible. I feel lactic, and I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like lactic acid. Isn't something that I particularly enjoy. So
I'm waiting for a guest to be on here that says that they enjoy that kind of stuff. I've not had one yet. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but I've not had one of them on yet. But the thing that I think really stood out there for me is that quite often, I mean, blocks come up a lot when people are talking about their favorite session. But then also it's things like, they'll say, oh, we bang out, I don't know, some fast 110s or fast 60s and stuff. Um, but you spoke earlier about how, with the data that you like, was related to kind of how you were moving
mm,
rather than like necessarily what the time would be and how fast it was. Um, and then the fact that your favorite session being the cone runs is related to that. I think that's really interesting. And obviously, I think people tend to, well, they tend to like what they're good at, or maybe like where they or something that they see value in, or something that makes a meaningful difference. And I feel like we've earlier on established in this conversation that, well, do you know what, when I was running the 100 meters in 48, 49 strides, I was running slower than I am now when I'm running 44, 45 strides. And you've already kind of given us the the rundown of where you see the cone runs fitting into that, and the fact that you like it. I think that really sort of reinforces the value that you see in that. Again, I'm completely putting words in your mouth here, but that's got
no,
my,
no,
my interpretation of what you're saying.
no, that's spot on, absolutely spot on. I think for me, you can look forward to the things that you're good at. So
Mhm.
some may say that I'm a good starter. So of course I'm going to love blocks.
Mhm.
I don't actually think I'm that good a starter. Okay, no, I'm a good starter. The
Mm.
thing is, I say I'm a good starter, and you see people like Christian Coleman, who I was
Yeah,
really upset I didn't get to race at the World Championships because I wanted to feel that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I
right,
really
okay,
wanted to.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I think it's important to feel like, because there's no one who's going to get out harder than him. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
but yeah, so I think you can just look forward to the stuff that you enjoy. But for me, like you said, it's what's going to make me better.
Mhm.
And even the grass runs, as much as I hate the grass runs, they have their place.
Mhm.
You know, in terms of, you know, the things that we're prioritizing in that sort of general prep phase.
Yeah.
You know, they have their place. And I think there needs to be, just like the 100-meter race, it's like a build up, you know, a build
Yeah.
up until you get to, and I think that's how your season kind of have to be. I can't just be, okay, what? Because I ran the last race I ran 10:03. So what? First day at winter, I'm gonna try and run 10:03. I'll tear my hamstring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think it needs to be a build. It needs to be a build up to it. So even how I approach my winter is going to be like that. So yeah, as much as I say I hate grass runs, it's probably one of the things you need the most, particularly at the start of the year, in terms of, you know, its place it's got in our programming. But yeah, for sure, I think I look forward to the things that I know are going to help me improve,
Yeah.
and they're not always the things that are most comfortable. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's a word for track and a word for life.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what it is, right? Getting better. You got to go out your comfort zone to get better, because otherwise you're staying the same.
Yeah,
So yeah,
100%.
yeah, that's sage advice. I like that. Right, I just want to finish off by saying thank you again so much for joining us.
I
It's
appreciate it. Thank
been
you for
a
having me.
pleasure following your progress this season and kind of seeing you come out and do what you've done. And I want to wish you all the best for. So I think you said just not this coming week, but the following week is when you're going to be starting your
Yeah, that's
preparation
right.
for the 2024 season. So I want to wish you all the best for that. And
Appreciate it,
yeah,
man.
I know it's competitive in the UK, but hoping to see you in Paris as well. And yeah, all the
Wee
best. All right.
wee.
There
Thank
we
you, man.
go, mate. There we go. You're ready with the language, that's for sure.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
All right, Eugene, you take care and thank you again.
All right, take care.